Hi there, Simon Atkins here again for video 2, how to save at least 20% of your tax bill and how I made $1 million in 1 year. So, thanks for joining me again. I hope you got something out of video 1. Video 2 is going to be all about the great advantages of property, but specifically the biggest one, which is the tax savings that you get with property. So, Kerry Packer even said in a 1991 Senate inquiry, he said if anyone in Australia isn't reducing their or minimising their income or their taxable income, then they need their heads read. If anyone, I'll say that again because I bumbled it a little bit. If anyone in Australia isn't minimising their tax, then they need their heads read. He went on to say something else about it's not like I want to be contributing more because the government isn't using it that well that I want to give you extra. So it's kind of funny. It's quite funny if you actually look it up. It's about a 90-second video. But he was always a fairly straight talker. So the tax benefits are absolutely fantastic. This is what I alluded to before when I was saying you need to, instead of your taxes bleeding away out of your income and you're not getting any benefit for them, you need to be able to redirect them back into something for you. And of course, like I said before, it's redirecting back into you so that your income is working as hard as it can, as hard as you are working for it, so that it can replace you at some time. Okay, so super important. It's also important to understand the cash flows around property, which I'm going to show you on the whiteboard here. So I'm going to go over that and don't blank out or anything like that. This is pretty simple, but it's important that you understand how the cash flows are going to work and how, based on those cash flows, how you're going to save at least 20% of your tax bill. Okay, so if you will say this is your property with your tenant in, looks like they need a good meal, and this is investment property number 1. Okay, so this is your investment property, and we'll assume it's around about $400,000 worth of property or thereabouts. Okay, so this is your bank account. This represents your bank account. And now, during the course of the year with your investment property, you've got money going into the bank account and money coming out of the bank account. Okay, so the money going into the bank account and the money going out of the bank account. So the first thing that goes into the bank account, obviously, is what this guy's paying is rent. Okay, so he's paying you rent over a course of 12 months. And the other thing that comes back in is that you don't normally see any of is tax. It comes back as cash flow to you when you do your tax return. So tax comes back in as well. So they're two cash flows that you get from owning an investment property. The other side of it, of what goes out, is the interest. So the interest component of the loan, you normally get interest-only loans for investment properties because that's the amount that's deductible against your income. Okay, you also have expenses, and the expenses are basically your normal household expenses like rates, building insurance, that type of thing. Plus, the extra one will be property management fees. Okay, so somebody will manage the property on your behalf. This will not be a second job for you. You can keep the job you've got. And this just works in the background. So you've got to treat it like a business, and you've got a client, much like you would have with a business. A client, you get tax benefits, you generate income from it, all the same kind of attributes as a business. So you need to be looking at this as a business. Okay. So the other thing I'll say too before I get into the actual numbers is the cash flows is there's two sides to property investment: the cash flows and the growth that I talked about a little bit in the previous property and how to get compounding growth. So these cash flows are supporting you through time to get that compounding I talked about and get the exponential growth. So this is what I'd call the engine of the property. This is the thing that's going to drive you to where you want to go to hold the property over time to get that compounding growth. Okay, so for a $400,000 property, we'll say roughly we'll get about $20,000 rent a year coming into the property. Okay. And then the interest component would be roughly the same. Okay, these aren't real numbers, but they wouldn't be far off. They're not crazy numbers by any stretch. They wouldn't be far off in the actual scenario. So about $20,000 going out. I'm just doing this so that you get the idea of the concept and you understand the concept around the cash flows and how they're going to work for you. So expenses on a property like this, as I mentioned, the building insurance and the rates, etc., and the property management fees would be around about $7,000. Okay, going out. So at the moment you can see that during the course of the year $20,000 has gone in, but $27,000 has gone out. Okay, so $7,000 I think, I haven't done the calculation, but I think it's about $120 a week or somewhere around that. So that $120 per week is what you put in to keep the property going during the course of the year, because you're going to be short basically $7,000 there, aren't you? So, because the 20 goes in and the 27 goes out. So you're putting that in to prop the property up during the course of that year, but then of course you're going to get benefits from with your tax return based on this. So I'll show you how that works. So once you put your tax return in, they'll look at your income. Let's say you're on $100,000 and you're paying around about $25,000 in tax during the course of the year. Okay, so to now look at it and say, okay, does this guy deserve a refund, or is he going to get charged more tax or whatever? You need to look at your investment scenario here. So we look at it and we go, okay, well, rent, he's received income of rent, so we add that on, 20,000. So it's actually increased your income, your gross income, to 120,000. Then we can look at this and go, okay, well, we can take off the interest, we can take off 20k there, we can take off the expenses, 7k there, and we can also take off this amazing thing, this wonderful thing called depreciation. Okay, depreciation. So that is what they call non-cash deductions. So non-cash deductions are things that you can claim that you haven't paid any money out for. Here you've had to pay money out, but you get to offset them. Here you don't pay any money out, but you still get to offset it. So what is depreciation? Well, on an investment property, brand new, you get the biggest benefits from depreciation for a brand new property. So you get to claim it, depreciation at 2.5% of the build cost or the build price over 40 years, and then you get to claim all the fixtures and fittings as separate lives. All right, so the construction of the building itself is a 40-year period at 2.5% each year for 40 years, and then like the floors, the lights, the carpets, the window treatments, all that kind of thing, pretty much everything within the property itself can be depreciated at different rates. And on the tax HA website, they've got a whole list of what those rates are. What you'll find is most of the internal stuff gets written off in the first 5 to 6 years or so. But for a property of this, you don't need to get too worried about that. Your accountant just claims that. You get what's called a depreciation schedule, which we can help you with, and the accountant just, once he's got that, he just claims that for you every year. Okay, so super simple, you don't need to worry about it too much. But for a brand new property like this one, you'd be looking at around about $12,000 or thereabouts in depreciation for the internal fixtures and fittings in the building construction itself. So you can take this $12,000 off here, okay? So like I said, that's like a free hit, which is absolutely fantastic. So that's 20, 37, 39, let's pretend it's 40, just for the ease of maths. And that brings that back to 80,000, okay? 80,000 you're paying, I think it's around about 17k on 80,000. So basically then they say, well, we've been able to write your income, your gross income down to 80,000. You should have paid tax on 17, but you paid 25,000, so you get a refund back of the difference between those two, which is $8,000, I think. Yeah, $8,000. So 8 grand comes back in. So you can see how that 28 comes, or that 8 comes back in, and it covers that 120 that you're putting in each week, plus you get some extra. So it covers your 7,000 that you paid in during the course of the year, and plus a bit extra, plus you're left with $1,000 in your account. Okay. So if you've been doing this, I hope you understand. First of all, I hope you understand that, and I hope that's simple enough. It's pretty straightforward. The rent goes in, the interest on the loan goes out, the expenses, normal household expenses, plus property management fees. Like I said, you treat it like a business. And just remember, an investment property, essentially all your outgoings are covered by the rent and the taxman. Okay, so the tenant and the taxman are covering your outgoings. When you buy your own home, no one covers any of that. You have to pay all of that out of your own pocket. So much easier with a property investment scenario. So, so all of those. The other thing I was going to say, you have to understand that these numbers here are there to support you. So when you've paid that 7,000 out, you've actually done that during the course of the year, and then you get a lump sum back of 8,000. What would you do with that 8,000? Okay, so that 8,000 sitting in like as a paycheck back into your account. It's come back in. So what would you do with that $8,000? You can put it down on your non-deductible debt. So if you've got a mortgage with a principal and interest loan on it, you can put that down, and each year you can do that to pay your mortgage off a lot more quickly. Okay, so we can also show you how to do that. You can pay your mortgage off much more quickly. You're saving tax. You're having the tenant and the taxman pay for this property for you, and you can help pay, if you've got a mortgage on your own home, you can help pay that down quickly as well. So absolutely fantastic. You're compounding the effects of this benefit here by paying down the non-deductible debt on your home loan as well. So what could be better than that? So I hope you understand that. It's a fantastic scenario. If more people could understand this, I'm sure a lot more people would invest in property. So that's the key to it, and that's how that you can save at least 20%. In this scenario, 8,000. I'll just refer back to that. 8,000 would have been paying $25,000 or thereabouts on $100,000 in tax. So that person would have saved about 33% of their tax bill. So as you can see, pretty easy to write down your tax bill over the years, particularly if you get 2 or 3 properties or so. So the next thing I just want to talk about quickly is, I talked about how I made $1 million in 1 year, and it's all about positioning yourself. So you have to position yourself in the market. And I mentioned in the previous video about like a surfer having his board, if he's standing on the beach, he isn't going to catch the wave, he's got to be out in the back of the swell. So the first thing to understand is, much like the swell or the surf, properties move in cycles. Now a good example of this is what's happened in Sydney over the last 5 years or so. That the property market, 5 years ago Sydney would have been here, and it's ridden their major wave over the last 5 years. Okay, and Sydney property price has gone up about roughly across the board around about 70% in that time, which is huge growth. So it's their major growth cycle that they've had. Doesn't mean they haven't had minor growth cycles before that, but once every 15 years or so, you'll probably end up with a major growth cycle. And that's where you want to be positioned for mostly, is to get this growth cycle here. So they're at the peak of the market here now, and in fact they're just coming off the top there a bit. So what will happen from here in terms of the cycle for Sydney is they got to the top, they'll probably come down a bit, it'll cool off a bit because people get crazy here, they push the prices past what they really probably should be, and it'll cool off for some time before they start coming back into a recovery mode here and then coming back into their new major growth cycle. But that could be another 15 years or so away before they come into that major cycle again. So before that, it's interesting to note though, before that last 5 years that Sydney's had, that strong growth that it's had in the last 5 years, 8 years prior to that, it was one of the worst performing capital cities in Australia. And that's why you have to be positioned at the right time to be there when the growth takes effect. So Perth is at this position right now. We're just coming off the bottom of our market, and this is where you get the most value. Most people want to jump in at the top of the market here when it's the most expensive and the outlook is the worst. So you're paying the most and the outlook is the worst. So it's not a good time to be buying property at this point in the cycle. And yet most people jump in at around about this stage here, or beyond that, from about there up, because it's just getting, it's more like about the media talking about saying how auction clearance rates are like 90-odd%. There's multiple people putting in offers for property, you know, property prices going up, going up, going up. So people get the fear of missing out and they all want to jump in here, which is, if you have a clue about it, you understand that this is the worst possible time to get in. This is the best possible time, but people find it harder to get in at this point when the market's kind of flat before it comes into its new growth cycle. So Perth now, much like when my wife and I got in, like I said, I was on a low income, she was on a middle kind of income. We got in at this point, and then the last growth cycle that Perth had, we rode this wave, and during that period of time, that's when we made over $1 million in 1 year just from the growth, because we had the asset base and then we had that growth to go with it, and that compounding effect over those years of very, very strong growth. So that's what you need to do. You need to position yourself so you can get the benefit of that. And most people don't do that. They don't position themselves. They can jump in like as a Johnny come lately up here and get torched because they pay the most, and then they get very little in terms of growth for some time after that. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you. I hope it's clear as a bell, and you realise now that Perth is a fantastic opportunity to get into the market. Okay, so next video, video 3, and the final video, is all about what type of property to get these fantastic benefits from property, what type of property you need to get, and the kind of location that you need to get into to be able to get these types of benefits. So I'll be talking about that, super, super important, in the next video. So make sure that you see that. It will be coming to your inbox in the next day or so. So an absolute must, and then that'll kind of round out as much as I can round out your knowledge in 3 short videos, and you'll know most of what you need to know. You know more than 90% of people out there that invest in property, I can promise you that. So once again, if you look below the video here, I've got an offer for you, a free offer, and if you qualify for that, and it's something that you're interested in, then right at the bottom of the page there's a button that you can click on, and we can have a chat over the phone. We're very busy at the moment, but we'll try and fit you in when our time suits you, and we'll try and we'll bring to the game, we'll bring to the table what works for you based on your own situation. We can try and see how this model could work in for you. So everyone's slightly different, everybody's situation is slightly different, and it's all about talking to you about your specific situation and how it's going to work. So I hope that all makes sense. I look forward to seeing you in the third video, but it's bye for now.